Welcome back to Spitball and Cards. In today's video, we have Goldin Auction CT scanning a first edition sealed Pokemon box. Is that morally okay? As well as we have new Hall of Famers. Let's talk about the new Hall of Famers. So in this episode, you have me, Scott, we have Ty, Jeff, Phil, and Chris is not here this week, but he'll be back next week, like always. Guys, how do we feel about a major auction house taking one of the most expensive sealed boxes of all time, CT scanning it to prove its authenticity? Is it a slippery slope? Is that really what it is? Is that a logical fallacy, or is it actually an issue? What do you think, Jeff?
We all remember when the box was opened and revealed to have G.I. Joe cards inside. Yeah. Was that 2 years ago now with Logan Paul? And that was a BBCE sealed box, which I don't know if that even damaged the reputation, surprisingly. Sealed case. Thank you. So we all remember that. Yes, I don't want to see that happen to anyone. I don't want to see them purchase something that has a different product in there. But it is a little worrisome that an auction house is using that technology, because what sort of limitations are there on that technology? How do we know that they're limiting it to just making sure that the correct product is in there? Be pretty easy to take that next step and seeing what is in that particular box. And I feel like there's a lot of people in the hobby, myself included, who would be concerned about buying products from a place that is doing that. And we know from in the past that Goldin's used that technology to make sure, I think it was a first generation iPhone, that the correct product was in that box. So they've had this technology for a while. This is the first time, as you mentioned, they've acknowledged using it on sports cards. But I do feel that this is a very slippery slope, and I would be concerned.
Phil, where are you at on this situation?
Yeah, mixed feelings too. If this is going to be a mainstream use case and other auction houses are going to do similar stuff, I like how the auction houses don't have control over the technology themselves. Like there's no dashboard where they can control the CT scanner. I like how it's somewhat separated.
For now.
I don't know if I trust. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if I trust IIC, this company. I don't know if we know enough about it yet. And I guess if this is going to be a mainstream thing, we need, in the last episode or one of the episodes we recorded today, we talked a lot about transparency. We need to know more about the process. What exactly can they see? How can they see it? How long does it take? Who are the people that have this information? And maybe that's all on this LOA thing. I do like the idea of it as someone who has a lot of sealed product to know that what I have is legitimate. If I was to send stuff out for auction or buy something high end right now, this was a Chinese first edition booster box.
It's Chinese?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
I think a lot of the WotC era booster boxes are really, really undervalued compared to the stuff that's out today that came out within the last 3, 5, 7 years. And this is a large reason why, because of that whole issue that happened at BBCE. What I think is what is BBCE going to do to improve their processes? Steve Hart, where are you going to this, man? I hope he's a forward thinker and he's got a way to recreate his business model, because from the people that I talk to that really know the vintage wax space, they really trusted Steve Hart, and most of them still do. This happened with TCG, wasn't his area of expertise. So why do you say it was a good case, man? You looked at the tape, so I get it. You can rag on him for that. From the sports card side of things, he does have a lot of respect. So how is he going to incorporate these new technologies to help? How are we going to do this in a way that's safe and that doesn't get the technology in the wrong hands? And I'll let the viewers weigh in. Do you guys trust Ken Goldin? Right? I'm not saying if I do or I don't, but would you have less of an issue with this if it was Heritage or another auction house? Do you even know who's running those companies to be able to trust those people more than Ken Goldin? That's definitely another thing, is that perceived level of trust.
Ty, where are you at in the whole situation?
A couple of things. I'm glad you brought up BBC, because one of the solutions that I had proposed internally at SCI was finding a solution to, people have brought up can you just put lead inside of the boxes to disrupt the CT scanner? Or now this is obviously forward thinking, not legacy product, but looking ahead to say what can we do with new products? But something much more obvious to me the whole while has been, getting some kind of tape or something that would change color. I poked around and looked into this a little bit, and apparently there are like X-ray sensitive films that you can ostensibly put like on the outside of packaging that would make it visible to see if it had been exposed to radiation. And that to me seems like a logical next step for BBCE or PSA, even if they wanted to get into authentication of wax with a pretty strong reputation overall for what they do, to come in and say, we actually are going to use different technologies, possibly including CT scanning, with a strict audit practice around this to make sure that the only people who actually see the contents of this are under some kind of really strong NDAs or something. And then you seal it with that photosensitive tape inside of the packaging, visibly on the outside, so that if that thing's been scanned and then it's been shrink wrapped by BBC or something, and it goes through a CAT scan, you're going to know that it's been scanned. And that to me seems like a good way to solve the problem for the old stuff. And then for the new stuff coming out, the manufacturers simply put that underneath the shrink wrap inside of the packaging, visible, so that you have a way of knowing what's going on with those. When it comes to like the auction houses themselves doing it, I think there's a huge conflict of interest. And I do think there's a big trust question, and people always raise an eyebrow. What we know is that it doesn't matter if it's Ken or any other marketplace. They've got whales who are on their speed dial. They've got a little black book of people they call. They go out and they prospect. Their sales teams look for, have connections with people who have pre-established lines of credit and funds available to say, when this card pops up, I want to know. And they broker private deals. So let's say somebody couldn't come in and say, next time you get this Chinese first edition box that comes through, I want a private deal. Don't even send it to auction. I'll make sure the person gets taken care of. But then you have this like drama of like, well, we're going to go ahead and CT scan it and make sure it is what it is. By the way, there's not anything really good in there, so we should probably just send this one to auction, depending on who it is. I'm not saying they would do that. I'm just saying that's the concern. That's the overarching concern, is that they're then telling their whales, don't bid on this because XYZ. We talked about this in the last episode, the controversy with the Skeens card sort of just going fast funnel through the Fanatics marketplace and never making it to Ken. We'll flip the script. How much of a conflict of interest would there be with Fanatics Collect doing this, manufacturing the sealed products, and then CT scanning their own products, potentially at some point down the road to confirm the authenticity of it? That gets like real dicey, like really, really dicey. So, I think it needs to be an independent third party. There needs to be some kind of guarantee that the people who are doing the scanning aren't disclosing what the contents are. They're simply authenticating the contents themselves. Maybe that could mean that the way that there's some transparency to the scanning process, especially with Pokemon cards, to know that the backs of the cards were the only thing scanned. But then I guess you wouldn't really be able to authenticate that it's a first edition or what it says it is if you just look at the back of the card necessarily. So technically Goldin didn't scan the package themselves. They sent it to a third party, and then they were told whether or not it was what it said it was. But like, that third party doesn't know how to authenticate wax.
Yeah, and the third party,
they're looking at packs, so they're looking inside any of the packs, so they're looking at just the inside of the box,
right.
So they're just looking at inside of the case and at the box. Wait,
and then who could get that information? As Ty said, well, who's to say that company didn't let somebody else know what it has in, so then they can be the ones deciding what they want to bid on it? I just feel like there's a lot of hands in the pie.
I'm sure those companies already have things in place so that doesn't happen. But we know things happen. So we don't want to accuse them of doing anything, because I'm sure they have safeguards in place. But at the same time, we've seen with other auction houses in the past, PWCC in particular, where things aren't as good behind closed doors. So I'm concerned about it.
We're not accusing anyone of doing anything.
No, we're not.
We're just showing that there's a problematic nature to it.
And if there's a risk, that's going to concern the consumer.
Yeah, there's human tendency in this that's going to be tough to get around at a point.
Yeah, if you're scanning those boxes and you do know that there's 2 Charizard first edition, and then all of a sudden you scanned it, but now you can go on auction and potentially bid on it, because not only can you see the cards, but you can see the centering of the cards. And so you can. It's just does
have your friend's friend bid on it, so there's no tie to you. Yeah, I just think that there's a lot of ways to game the system.
There's also a lot of ways this could go wrong for IIC if somebody opens that box. And what if there are hits missing, right? Then it's, let's go back to IAC. Do you have an insurance policy? Can I get my money back? No, of course not. No, they're too small. They don't have those things yet. maybe they'll get there. But if they're wrong, and
Phil,
then it's
are
like,
they
well, what did
saying?
you actually check? Oh, we only
Yeah.
checked it to see the temperature inside the box and the distance between the packs and the foil. Oh, so that's what people were paying for? People were paying double market value for this, like, this level of comfort.
You can totally
Yeah.
reseal a box after removing and resealing the packs. Like,
Right.
It's stupid. Unless you're counting the number of hollows and it makes sure it aligns and it's an even spread. And then you might as well just print out a box and it's exactly what the contents are. So, you're getting 2 Charizards and you're getting 3 Blastoise. And at what point, like, this has been my issue with scanning these cards. You're not selling a sealed box a lot of the time or sealed packs. You're selling the cards just in a different case. Like, what the cards are. And that's why I don't think it's okay. So, I don't know. Any final thoughts on this? Would we all agree it's a very unique situation?
It's like, on the one hand, you see the need for it, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, on the one hand, it gives me buyer confidence. Okay, you've authenticated that it is what it is. And it's not G.I. Joe, nobody's getting duped, apparently, but somebody might be getting inside info, and that's the flip of the coin. So I would love to see third party somehow, BBC or otherwise, PSA, somebody somehow do this with consumer confidence, independently, anonymously, under lock and key somehow. But I don't know how to even do that. So
yeah,
it's a good question.
I doubt there's anything wrong, especially on the first time this has happened. But if this becomes a mainstream method of authenticating 2003 exquisite boxes, also doing 2011 Topps update boxes, if this becomes mainstream, it's just the bigger it gets, the less you can trust it. So, unfortunately, as of right now, I'm sure if you want to buy a Chinese first edition box, go for it. I'm sure it's fine. So, all right. With that being said, we also have 5 new Hall of Famers. Do you guys pay attention to the Hall of Fame ballot? Is that anything that interests you, or is that not really your thing? I'm sure we're all baseball fans, but do you care?
Yeah, of course. Everybody cares about Hall of Fame. I mean,
I cared a lot more when Helton and Walker are on the ballot. Now that they're both in, I didn't watch it nearly as much. I used to watch like every ballot come in. I'd critique every ballot and look at it, But this year we have 2 era committees players. We have Dick Allen and Dave Parker. And then for Major League Baseball, we have Ichiro, we have CC Sabathia, and I wish Chris was here because we do have Mr. Billy Wagner on his 10th ballot.
Relievers are people too.
Any thoughts on this? Well, I have a thought first. How crazy is it that Ichiro didn't get 100%? People might say, well, he's overrated at a 107 OPS plus, but he's also the all-time hits leader across all professional sports. So it's pretty tough if you want to count his Japanese league stats. I do think if I had a vote and anybody had a vote for your baseball fan, you're probably voting for Ichiro. So whoever that one person was, he's being talked about, or she's being talked about. Maybe that was their goal.
I'd probably vote for him.
Mariano Rivera paid him off.
Yeah.
Maybe the second ballot. I don't know if he's done enough to prove himself. I mean, all those Japanese hits, do they really even matter?
I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or serious.
Well,
I never can.
I'm being mostly. I'm mostly joking, but if why would Ichiro be the second guy ever to get unanimous votes? Like, isn't the whole purpose of having so many writers to cancel out the exceptions to ensure that people get in as they're supposed to? But I don't know. I mean, Ichiro was a really great player, and as we buried the lead with Derek Jeter, we failed to articulate how much cultural significance he had. Jeter more of a celebrity. Ichiro still a little bit of a global celebrity.
Absolutely.
And fan perception, even though the stats, even if we look at more advanced methods today of measuring statistical performance with WAR and with a lot of these advanced metrics like OPS plus, yes, you can apply those to players of the past and you can make certain observations. But I mean, Jeter and Ichiro were guys that kind of transcended the era at the time. And Jeter also didn't get 100% unanimous votes. So I guess I'm not surprised. I'm not that mad. Sure, I guess that person should have voted for him.
It's pretty amazing that Ichiro did debut at age 27 and still racked up 3,000 major league hits. Yeah. That's insane. That's crazy.
I appreciate the art of hitting, and that's why I love Ichiro and his cannon of Narm.
Ichiro, the thing is with Ichiro that's unique. If he really wanted to be more of a power hitter, he could have been. But he was playing his game how he wanted to play his game. So they didn't care about OPS plus as much back when he was playing. It's hard to really make the argument that he was less valuable when value was measured differently and he was playing a certain way to hit that value. It's kind of like Dick Allen. Dick Allen's being more appreciated today, and he made the Hall of Fame because he's being appreciated as a 150 OPS plus guy, 150 for his career. And that's why he got in the Hall of Fame, while Ichiro is more of what players kind of liked at this era. So it is tough. 60 WAR, 311 batting average, 117 home runs, 107 OPS plus, did play till he was 45 years old. Pretty crazy. Any thoughts, Ty or Jeff, about Ichiro at all?
I think he was a great ambassador of the game, and I think that went a long way. He was really good with the media, and the fans loved him. As you said, he played for a long time. It is the Baseball Hall of Fame, so I think a lot of people did take into account his previous statistics in Japan. What's that?
See this foul ball right here?
Yeah.
I got this in April of 2004 as I was sitting on the right field baseline off of the bat of Ichiro Suzuki. So
Nice.
I've always been an Ichiro fan, which is pretty cool. I want to try to go find the film of me getting it, but I don't know if that's possible from 2004. But anyways, I've always loved Ichiro ever since I was a kid.
Man, what do I say about Ichiro? What do I say about all that? Yeah, I mean, it is interesting that one person abstained. I think I'd love to know the motivation for it. I feel like, I don't know, maybe they should have to explain that in this particular. Come forward and announce yourself. We've talked about the history of different awards and how players are evaluated differently over time for what they did and some of their statistical accomplishments. We've talked about Ichiro's MVP in that first year in 2001, when I'm looking at the list now, and he had the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15th best OPS that season.
Yeah.
In the AL, by the way. Jason Giambi had a 1.137. Tommy was 1.040. Ichiro was all the way down at 0.838. So it is interesting to go back. And then even in terms of WAR, he was 5th in WAR that season, fourth.
Here was the MVP.
Probably should have been A-Rod.
Right here.
Yeah.
Like Jason Giambi had an excellent year. Where was A-Rod? 8.3 WAR. Yeah. It's unfortunate, but all time, isn't this the most hits ever in a season? 242? 262. It was this one. In
262, yeah, right. He had a bit better year. Yeah.
That was that one. But anyways, so here is that Hall of Fame voting that Ty was talking about.
Yeah.
1.137 OPS. Eesh. Good for Jason.
As somebody who found an Ian Kinsler Bowman Chrome First refractor at Culture Collision this last weekend, I'm sad but not surprised to see him not make it to 5% to make it to future ballots. He was obviously Hall of Very Good, much like a lot of the guys who are becoming eligible this year for the next coming vote. But your boy Tulowitzki also falling off the list. Scott Cargo was on there. He had a couple Rockies trying to make their way in the list, but not
Tulo, just like David Wright, Hall of Fame talent, not a Hall of Fame career. You got to play past age 30. Neither of them can do
injuries.
it.
Too many injuries.
That's interesting you say that, Scott. I've always been in favor of the Baseball Hall of Fame remaining small. The other major sports like to let a lot of people in, which is great too. I always just thought baseball was special because of almost the elite nature of everybody in there. And I don't know, that's definitely softening. And we've seen it before, especially with some of the Veterans Committee ads. And I love Dave Parker. When he came to the Brewers, he played for the Brewers for one season, and it was awesome. He'd get in the on-deck circle. He'd swing his sledgehammer instead of a weighted bat, and they'd play Sledgehammer over the loudspeakers. It was awesome. But he played past age 30. He played from age 30 to 40, but during that time, he only had 1 year where he had a WAR above 1.5. Wow. One time in that whole decade.
Yeah.
So I think he was a career 40 WAR guy, and he played until he was 40. And yet we've seen guys be just thrown off the ballot. A guy like Kenny Lofton, for instance.
Dude, Kenny Lofton. Don't get me started on Kenny Lofton.
All right. Well, I'm just, and he'll have his day with the Veterans Committee. And Dave Parker was a monster for those few years at the end of the 70s with the Pirates. Right. But just as far as longevity goes, I don't know.
In my opinion, if I had a ballot, I know the Veterans Committee, the Heirs Committee, they operate differently than the writers. I would not have voted for Dave Parker.
I mean, look at those WAR totals, Scott. I mean, he played 162 games and had negative WAR.
His 162 game average for his career was 2.6. And then we know WAR's not everything. Look at the other
No,
stats.
it's not everything. And I got a
298
lot of
average.
flack I got flack from certain people watching when I kind of gave that opinion on Blabin that said, "Oh, you had to be there to see him,"
which
yeah, I get it, and he was awesome for those few years. But is that what we're going towards now? If you're a dominant player and a great player for 4 or 5 years, is that enough to be in the Hall of Fame?
Can I show you a guy who should have been in the Hall of Fame? Dick Allen. Look at this. 156 OPS plus for his career, almost 60. WAR over 350 home runs, better batting average. Like, this is the type of guy, though. Like, look at his Baseball Savant page. I know they didn't have that back in this era. Shorter career than Dave Parker, but he averaged 5.4 versus 2.6 WAR. I think
absolutely he should have been.
He should have been in easy, in my opinion. I would have voted for Dick Allen. If we look at all-time OPS plus leaders, this puts him. Where's Dick Allen? He should be up here on the front page. It says he's 25th all time. And if we want to do since like 1950, he's probably going to be top 10 all time. And also, that excludes Negro Leagues and then early Major League Baseball pre-integration. He's like top 10 or 15 all time. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
Look at Turkey Stearns up there at the top of the list. So I have a question actually for you guys. Do you think we saw the recognition of Negro League stats and Josh Gibson and that unfold this last year, and we're seeing more and more highly notable players come over from Japan? We're talking about Ichiro. Is there a world where MLB or Hall of Fame ever starts to more significantly recognize NPB stats, Japanese stats, as part of accomplishments if guys play over there until they're 27 and then they come over here?
I don't think so.
That was a quick no, because the Naismith Hall of Fame recognizes international stuff for basketball. It recognizes it's the Basketball Hall of Fame. So
but it's recognizing not really. It's recognizing like the importance to the game more so than their.
Yeah, let's see what's on Ichiro's plaque. Is it going to talk about how his career in Japan? Is that going to be on his plaque? That'll be a good.
The numbers will not be on his plaque, but it will talk about his career. And that's great. They might say he also had an extra blank 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 in Japan. I don't know. The reason why we're counting the Negro League stats is because of racism in America. Like, we can't do the same thing for the KBO. We've seen the talent imbalance between all leagues until recently. Even KBO to Major League Baseball is still pretty decent. Even the MPB is pretty decent still. We have good players coming over like an Ohtani, one of the best players of all time, but it's still a different talent. We see pitchers go over there and become the best pitchers in the world when they couldn't make a league roster here.
Is it different talent? Look at the World Baseball Classic. I mean, if Japan's constantly in that mix.
Yeah, Aaron Judge didn't play, Bryce Harper didn't play. I'm just saying, though, like...
Plus, the MLB was distributed across multiple countries, so it's not like the U.S. team.
Sure.
Yeah, it's already integrated. It's not.
And there's a lot of guys that were held out, right? They weren't trying as hard. They didn't care as much. But, to Scott's point, you're still a little hamstrung in many cases to get over to this country today. There's different, requirements and stuff. You've got to wait longer in certain countries, and you've got to escape your country. But yeah, the Japan League, if it helps tell a narrative, like with Ichiro, sure. And in that case, he was a hitter that faced, pitching over there is more comparable to pitching over here versus the hitting here and the hitting over there in Japan. So you couldn't take like a pitcher's stats, like, say if Yamamoto has like close to a Hall of Fame worthy career. Actually, he did win 3 MVPs. So maybe it still counts a little bit, depending on what it is, what the accolade is, what the narrative is. And if there's a little bit you need to get over the hump to make that Hall of Fame case.
Is Yu Darvish a Hall of Famer?
Absolutely not.
Okay, there you go. He has 35.
But he'll probably be on the ballot, just like Neil Walker and Howie Kendrick were.
Which is fine, but he's 35 WAR in Major League Baseball, and he debuted at age 25. But if he debuted at age 19 in Major League Baseball, he could have had 60. So it's like, you can't, it's too hard. Ichiro would have gotten into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame if he did not play baseball in Japan. Maybe not this close to unanimous, but he still would have gotten in with 3,000 hits in the career he had, in my opinion.
So the reason I think it's a little different with, I understand why they made the decision to incorporate the Negro League stats. And yes, there's a racism element to that. There's also a broader movement, not to make it overly political, but like a broader movement toward a lot of attempts at corrective behavior to the past or other politically correct activities like renaming of teams from Indians to Guardians and Redskins to Commanders. That
good job, Ty. You got us demonetized.
Yeah, well, I'm bringing this up because I think it's an important point to think about the global nature of things, and if they're trying to push things out and also internationalize things and recognize other aspects, NBA basically saved itself in many ways by going international. They started bringing more talent. That maybe saved themselves is the wrong way. Michael Jordan and the branding around superstars saved them, but then they started going international and they were able to massively grow their revenue and increase their talent pool. And like I said, the Basketball Hall of Fame recognizes all kinds of basketball accolades, everything, not, college stats, international play, all kinds of things beyond this. I don't think it's a far stretch to say that they would do that to recognize Japanese leagues. And if it gets to the point where somebody becomes convinced that there's some aspect of that was like historically not respecting other countries or other things, I don't think it's a far stretch. I think we've seen crazier things happen to say that they would start to recognize some of those stats at some point down the road, not for the same reasons as the Negro Leagues natively in this country, but I definitely wouldn't have responded like quickly to be like, that's never going to happen. I think it's actually possible.
I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's likely. If we look at Masataka Yoshida, man, he was the GOAT in Japan. That guy sucks in Major League Baseball.
Well, I do want to, on behalf of Chris, I would like to say that he was very happy for Billy Wagner, and Billy Wagner was obviously very excited about it. So it was good for him. And yeah, there is definitely a movement towards guys that were seen as elite relief pitchers for their era to be in. So his getting in is a good predictor of some other guys going in soon. Kimbrel, Kenley Jansen, those kind of guys. So it's a little disappointing to see him get 88% of the vote, and a guy like Felix Hernandez, who was really good for a handful of years, kind of like Dave Parker, dominant. He didn't have the win totals because he was on some terrible teams, but still put up some amazing seasons, get only 20% of the vote. So that's just a little disappointing to me.
I will actually say for you, though, Felix getting 20% of the vote on his first year is a great sign for his Hall of Fame candidacy. Huge.
Yeah,
Billy
I get that. I know there's a lot of people who like to vote in certain ways to see that percentage go up. But to me, I don't know.
Got to get Andrew in there.
Billy Wagner started at 10.5%. Larry Walker started at 20.3%. Mike Messina started at 20.3%. Todd Helton started at 16.5%. So my point is, I actually think that is a very good, he has until 2035 to get in the Hall of Fame. I think he can get there. It's good for Cole Hamels. Help Cole Hamels with Felix doing so well.
Yeah. Somebody was comparing statistics. I can't remember. It was on IG, but I think it was like Burley, Pettit, and I can't remember who the other one was. Maybe it was Felix, maybe it was Sabathia. In any case, the players' careers stacked up really similarly, and the vote totals were not at all the same. And I know with Pettit, there's some other things there, but there's Felix.
I was surprised about Felix not having more Cy Young finishes. He only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I thought he'd have more than that.
Short. No, that was his peak. That was his
very
peak.
short peak. But yeah, so Cy Young winner. He was great. Mariners' best pitcher ever.
Pettit would be interesting, like a well-liked dude, probably go to the media, HGH.
The HGH.
So if he was to get in, just because he was well-liked, even though he admitted to HGH and he did fail a test, right? He at least failed one test, or he's in the Mitchell report or something.
He did fail, and then he had that public apology saying he took it to get back from injury quicker.
Pettit's failure was like admirable, kind of. He didn't deny it like everybody else for years. He just straight up said, yeah, I took it. I want to compete, and I'm sorry. I kind of respect that. So
I thought after that, everybody who got caught would just say, oh, I was using it to get back from injury. And some did. Some have said that, but that seemed to be, he seemed to be the most forgiven of people who came forward with that.
How do you feel about Ryan Braun?
I was going to say, let's talk about the 2026 eligibles. Nobody on there other than Cole Hamels has any chance.
Yeah, it's a rough. Can you bring that list up? I think Braun's great. He's going to be on the Brewers Wall of Honor, but he's not a Hall of Famer.
And with him, he got caught once, blamed it on the tester, and then got caught another time for real. So really 2 times, right?
I think he just caught once, didn't he?
I think it was just that one.
A-Rod was caught 2 or 3 times, but Manny Ramirez was too. I don't think Braun was. Was he?
Just once for Braun?
I'm trying to remember how the
bad came out. He like blamed someone, tried to get him fired, tried to ridicule him, and he was just,
he blamed the guy who carried the sample because he kept it at his house overnight. But you might be right, Phil, because I don't know how they would have found that out if he didn't get caught again. Because he seemed to be in the clear on that one. He really ruined his reputation.
He wasn't that good after that, was he? He wasn't the same guy.
No, and he had a huge, long contract that the Brewers still had to.
Yeah, there's no one on this list besides Cole Hamels.
That's it. Rick Porcello, career 18.8 WAR, 150 wins, 4.4 ERA.
Should we compare Rick Porcello's Cy Young win versus Justin Verlander's year that same year? Crazy. Verlander had more first place votes and still lost the Cy Young because Rick Porcello had more second place votes than Verlander.
Because Rick Porcello had 22 wins. Woo!
I looked at Ryan Braun, and it was still based on that same test. The leak about his link with Biogenesis came out, and then ESPN got a hold of that story, and then Bosch came out and talked about how he had that.
Yeah, there was a delay because he won the appeal. And
he won the appeal. That guy, the arbiter, was fired over it, and then he had that big speech about how he was redeemed. And then he had a huge season, and then the next year stuff started leaking out. He was suspended for the rest of the season, and that was it.
So we also have CC Sabathia. I think deserved it.
Brewers legend.
Yeah, he really is a Brewers legend. 62.3 WAR, 251 wins. You won't see that very often anymore. 3.74 ERA, which is actually pretty high. His ERA plus was 116, but he did have 3,093 strikeouts, which is what sealed it.
Yeah, he's a workhorse. He's kind of the link to that, a link to the last group of guys. Verlander, Kershaw, Scherzer, Greinke. They're kind of the last of their kind to get to those big numbers, and he was kind of the link to get there, the link of a workhorse. And
we can actually compare him to Greinke because I think this sealed Greinke being a first ballot Hall of Famer in some ways. Because if we compare them, the only thing Greinke doesn't have is he has lower ERA, more WAR.
Way lower.
Also, he only has a little bit fewer strikeouts, and Greinke could have come back if he wanted. Better like Wards, Gold Glove, Silver Sluggers, no championship, but I think it's sealed for him, which is cool. So, how do we feel about the Hall of Fame? Too watered down? I want to note that baseball has over 24,000 players that have debuted in the history of Major League Baseball, and less than 200 players, 250 players ever made it to the Hall of Fame, including this batch. How do we feel about it? About 2% Major League Baseball, 1% to 2% make it in.
I think most of them are good players.
Yeah, I think so too. I would have voted for Billy Wagner. I would have voted for CC, and I would have voted for Ichiro. So I'm totally cool with all of that. Dave Parker is the only one that I don't really know about, but like Jeff said, I wasn't alive in that era. I don't know. Like we're talking about Ichiro playing differently. Maybe Dave Parker did too. Who knows? But
for me, eye test. Yeah, the famous eye test.
The eye test is funny because people always say, man, I never thought Larry Walker was a Hall of Famer when I watched him. Like, bro, you didn't watch him. That's the thing. He played for the Rockies. If he played for the Yankees, you would have watched him and you would have thought he's a Hall of Famer if it's the eye test. You got to watch a player to think they're a Hall of Famer. So Phil's giggling, so I think he disagrees.
Well, he played for a lot of teams. And I think we all saw that. That's when Baseball Tonight was actually a thing. So we saw his highlights.
Any final thoughts on this? Or are we feeling good about Hall of Fame? How does this impact their cards?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as far as the card impact goes, we saw it a little bit with Ichiro. The day it was announced, there was a big run on Ichiro cards, and now I think there's going to be a leveling off and sort of a going down. Typically, the highest it gets is the run up to it, and then even by the time he's inducted this summer in Cooperstown, it will be back to where it was.
I agree with you, Jeff. I think the time to really sell your cards is, well, buy the cards when they're really bad at another career, kind of like a Arenado is going to be in the next 5 years. But then as the Hall of Fame's approaching, like a year or two away is when they start to move up, and then they flatten, and then they're back to where they were. So it's kind of what I've noticed. Okie doke.
Yeah, if you didn't sell Billy Wagner already, you know, you probably missed the boat there. But he's probably still elevated versus a month ago.
Dave Parker's floor is also higher. Same as Billy Wagner. Those type of guys who were not shoe-ins. Now people who have Hall of Fame runs want their cards more than they would have, which is helpful. So, all right, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.